green summer fade, and winter draw near. My Lord, in your presence I live without fear. Through tempest, through snows, through turbulent tide, the touch of your hand is my strength and my guide. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. I ask for no riches that death can destroy. I crave only thee, your love and your joy. The dancers will pass, the singing must end. I welcome the darkness with you for my friend.
Good morning, everyone. So nice to see your faces in person. Okay, so today's reading from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda. This is week 20, and the theme is activity versus inner communion. Swamiji writes, "Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within." The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we contemplated the well-known story of Martha and Mary. Traditionally, this story has been offered to show the two classic approaches to salvation, the first through action and the second through prayer. The excuse of the Marthas of this world has always been, the church needs its Marthas too. See, part of the problem is we weren't here last week, and so did Ananta do this one? Okay. Just wanted to make sure it sounded like a continuation. And you can always replace the word church for temple too. So same thing when we're talking about the readings of Master and Swamiji. Treatises, moreover, have been written to justify the Martha approach to piety, praising her self-sacrifice as perhaps an even higher demonstration of devotion. Thus do the unmeditative in religion try to justify themselves. Yet, the fact remains that Jesus rebuked Martha. Elsewhere, moreover, he spoke of the virtue of feeding the hungry, curing the sick, and housing those who were homeless. It wasn't that he disapproved of serving people. Wrong attitude was the object of his criticism. What he was criticizing was forgetfulness of the true goal of right spiritual action. Good deeds outwardly, without inner communion with God, will result in good karma, but will not bring final freedom from all karma. The path to inner freedom was described by Paramahansa Yogananda in these words: "Be always calmly active and actively calm." As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 2nd chapter, "He who is not shaken by anxiety during times of sorrow, nor elated during times of happiness, who is free from egoic desires and their attendant fear and anger, such a one is of steady discrimination. Do your duty in life." So counsels this great scripture elsewhere, but never lose sight of him to whom all action should be dedicated. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
I'd like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity, which is Yoganandaji's prayer poems. This is, I demand to return home. In fact, many of his prayers are prayer demands, and this is one such. Impediments beware, flee my path, I am homeward bound. Through the long corridors of time, stumbling often into pits of error, then lifted out by thy unseen hand, I have walked painfully. Discouraging darkness, barbed wire fences of habit, stony embankments of indolence, mountains of indifference, oceans of unfaithfulness, sirens of sense longing may stand even now in my path, as if to prevent my onward march to thy palace. But 1,000,000 kingdoms and sextillions of years of unblemished worldly happiness will never tempt me again to turn away from thee. Master's poetry is just so fantastic, and you just sort of want to just say, pull them up, let's go, just go straight to God. And it's just so engaging. There was a time, in fact, I heard Swamiji tell a story I hadn't remembered before of Master, that Master was sort of reminiscing about his lifetimes as a general, and that he said something along the lines of, even now I could marshal the armies, and he began talking thunderously like a warrior, and Swamiji said everybody just wanted to run out and grab a sword or something, head for the enemy. And so we need that kind of galvanizing force to get us moving, to keep us moving. And that's one of the points, to keep us going. Someone was saying in a satsang, why do we need to sort of keep saying the same things over and over and over and over again, especially each week or even each day in our sadhana? And it's because we forget. Nayaswami Ananta read a poem, not in the satsang that you all had with him, but in his satsang the previous Sunday at Ananda Village with the whole Ananda, it was also broadcast and everything. And he read this poem and he said, isn't that fantastic and thrilling, and it just wakes us up. And but I can guarantee you that reading it once will not keep us awake. He said, from personal experience, we have that surge of energy and okay, never again, Maya Venda. And then after a little while, someone comes along and says, Inura koncha Maya Venama. You would like a little better than reason? Why not? Okay. So, it's a joy to see you all, really, and it's so nice to be here physically again. It's this sort of surreal, distant nearness that we have while we're away, and we have these Skype satsangs, and we see each other, and there's a lot going on, but still it's two-dimensional. And although thoughts are universally rooted and there is a connection, for example, we have nothing to tell you of our trip because you know it all. You were there with these little daily little updates on the phone and little this and that and happy birthday and to you and so on. Still, it's there's something of that reconnection. And we're very blessed because when Master traveled, for example, he was sending letters from India back to the U.S. regularly, but of course they took longer time to reach. When Swamiji would travel, especially in the later years, his videos and recordings and so on would go out to the whole world so people could follow him wherever he was and stay connected that way. But we even have this Skype tool for communication. I was going to say Skype Samadhi, but I don't think it's quite that good. And so still though, and of course the other advantage of that, which we've now been doing for a few years, is having others who are at Ananda Village also transport here. And all of them who were joining us, you all thanked us and them, but they also were thanking us for the opportunity to connect with you all during those satsangs. And if you missed any of those, do watch them on YouTube, because it's a nice way to get to know these acharyas who are also getting to know you all. And so it's very beautiful to have that ability to connect in a meaningful back and forth way at such a distance. And over time that you can build a friendship with people who you haven't even been in the same room with yet. And then we look forward to that time when we can all be together again. And it's something to be said about that desire and that sense of recognition of your own spiritual family. A few people here shared that when they went to Gurgaon, near Delhi, and anyway, I used to make a lot of jokes about how Delhi is farther away from here than California, but there's sort of an element of that. But at Ananda Delhi, there was this feeling of instant connection, recognition, and so on. And one person said, it's the first time I walked into a room of 100 people and I felt myself liking everyone instantly. And I was going to say someone else, but it turned out to be the same person, said, when traveling to the center in Pune, said, the first time I've taken a 2-hour flight and then arrived at a place that then felt just like home again. And so we feel that recognition, and that's a great gift, because that's something that's in us that recognizes this other as familiar to us. Master said there are families of souls that basically travel through time and space together, and that they are born on earth together, especially disciples of a great guru, are born together to help the guru in his work, which is of course just helping others and our own selves to find that joy that never goes. And of course that can only be the joy of God. And so we are a family. And Jyotish once said the nice thing about when we're all in the astral world together is there's no difference in language, there's no difference in age, there's no you came first and I came second and then you were gone before I got there, and none of that. We're all there together. But when we come on earth, we play out these different roles of working first on our own salvation and also helping others. As Master said, the highest prayer is, God, give me thyself, that I may give thee to all. And that's a very important point to remember in everything that we're doing. God, give me thyself, so that I may give thee to all. As Master said, people sometimes just to say it openly, he said in the Christian religion, but it could be for any religion that's really trying to go and build only outwardly, only trying to convert members, he said, they'll do much good, but they forget to save their own souls. And then he said, and then great yogis in India meditate in Himalayas, but don't help anybody else. And so we need both. And obviously you can be both. But that is really our path. God, give me thyself that I may give thee to all. We don't want to just say, let me give thee to all, but forget about myself. And that can happen when we're getting into this Martha consciousness. For those of you who missed the story last week, it's a very well-known story because of its spiritual impact, especially. That Martha and Mary were two sisters, disciples of Jesus. They were born as sisters of the same mother. But when all the guests came, and you can well imagine, Martha was running around saying, is there enough murika? Would you like another filter coffee? All these things. And, wanting to run in and check on the podi idlis and so on. And Mary was just sitting peacefully at the Guru's feet. And so Martha, after, sort of sweating it out, just said, Lord, tell her that, to get up and join me in the kitchen here. She's being lazy. And Christ made his famous comment, Martha, Martha, thou art careful and troubled about many things, but one thing is needful, and Mary hath chosen that good part, and it shall not be taken away from her. He was saying, look, you're doing all this serving and making sure everybody's fed, but you're not doing it with the right attitude. He wasn't saying sit down and let everybody starve. But he also was saying, he may have well, as Swamiji and Master pointed out, he may have well said, okay, Mary, for your sister's sake, just 5 minutes, go and help her finish. But Mary had the right attitude, because she was saying, the Guru is here, I am there, and that's fine. Now, someone could have been sitting next to Mary, like I'm going to sit at the Guru's feet, but do it with the wrong attitude. Swamiji said in the early days, there was a man who was kept hanging around him, and he didn't feel any particular affinity for this man, and so he, one day, I don't know how he found out, but essentially he found out what was this man doing. And what happened was the man came to Ananda and said, "How do you get to the top in this organization?" And someone said, "Well, hang around Swami." And so it's what he was trying to do some sort of political thing, just to be near Swami in the photographs or something. I don't know. And so, but it was with the wrong attitude. And similarly, Martha, someone could have been serving with here, just saying Om Guru, and doing this and saying, each person I feed is as if I'm feeding the Guru. And even though I'm over here and he's over there and I'm wishing I could be right there, still I am right there. It's all a question of our attitude. And so in our work, we can get so caught up in serving, for example, that we can then end up with the events and everything, and it's so wonderful. But when we start to feel there's no joy in the heart, and it's just like, oh, okay, one more, event and one more of this thing, and, okay, when do we start when it just becomes a business in our minds, when it just becomes a list of tasks to check off, then we need to take a moment, take a step out, and revitalize ourselves. We can do that in a moment, we can do that in a day, we can do that in a week. After a week, you probably should, that's enough. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just like we want to make sure that we're cultivating the right attitude. Because we can also, on the other hand, just be thinking so much of ourselves, I this, I that, I am kind of tired, or I am particularly spiritually brilliant today, I think. I don't know if anyone noticed, but new clothes, and we can get all so focused on ourselves that we're drying up in a different way. The ego is being watered well, but the soul and the heart are starting to shrivel. Because when we start to think so much and how well we're doing, we're limiting ourselves to where we are currently at. I've had this horrifying thought from time to time that I'll have some insight or some realization and go, okay, I have grasped wisdom sufficient, and feel kind of like, not bad, good point, now I perceive truth more clearly. And then this horrifying thought comes, how many lifetimes have I sort of had that same realization, reached this same level, whatever high, low it may be, whatever, and been pleased with it, just like, yes, I can be satisfied with this right here. And it's horrifying because it's like, what if it were 1,000 lifetimes with the same idea? But I say that with a smile, because don't be horrified. Just say, forget about it. Let me go on. In other words, let it be a reason for us to keep going, to keep seeking. We'll know when we have enough realization. As Master said, you will know when you will know. And so when you're a master, you will know it. When we're free, we will know it. And so keep going, and don't be, complacent. Don't be too satisfied with what we've achieved, only because there's so much more waiting for us, and so much more already in us. God says, I have a lot more to give you, and most of all to give you myself. And He can and He will, to the extent that we are open. If we said, thanks God, but I think I've had enough of you for now. He doesn't force feed us. Sometimes we wish He would, but He doesn't. And so on some level we have to always be a little bit unsatisfied, but at the same time, remember, God is joy, God is peace. And we find Him in joy and in peacefulness. So we don't meditate, as Swamiji said, saying, okay, I'd like joy, whenever, when am I ever going to get some of that? No, you have to meditate with joy, but also meditate with that earnest seeking, saying, God, I want you, come now. Not, as he again said, well, God, you can come to me if you feel like it. If you're, after all, I'm here and you're there. We have to call Him with that trust that He wants to come. Just look at how your life has changed since you started on this path. Just look at how you have changed since you started on this path. And I mean, one person was telling me on the phone, I'm reminded of, he was talking about some spiritual challenge, an outward challenge he was dealing with, and he said, well, I guess it just takes a long time. And I said, well, I mean, I don't know, because I've known you just a year, and in that year's time, if you look at all the changes that have happened in your life, and he said, I guess you're right, I hadn't thought of it that way. It's been really fast, actually. So again, look at that. Look at how much more peace you feel, how much better you're able to cope with bigger tests or the daily tests that chafe on our nerves. Again, we get more calm. We feel more strength, more energy. And just automatically, through our sadhana, through our devotion, and through our mixing again with our spiritual family. This is one of the great gifts Master gave us. Not only of a soul group, but also of the concept of, as he called it, basically a community of self-realization. Self-realization, your own freedom in God, is between you and God. No one can do it for you. And in a certain way, it's a completely solitary thing. Master said we must individually come to God. It's, as he said to the monks, there are lots of rats and mice living in the same property, but they're not advancing spiritually. And so we have to keep that in mind too, that we are very personally, with positive expectation and desire, as much as we can sincerely summon, seeking God ourselves. One person was saying that she was coming here to sadhana, at a time when no one else was here. And after a little while, she wondered, I come and all this and I'm meditating, but there weren't others there in the morning. And so I wondered if, maybe I'll just meditate at home. And then she said she had that realization of what about, for example, Swamiji, that after Master left the body, and Swamiji spent those remaining over 40 years, 64 minus 3, 61 years. 61 years faithfully serving Master. And with Master's presence growing more and more within him. That's the thing to remember too. It wasn't just out of a memory or a debt of gratitude to what Master had given him that he did this. Master became more and more a part of him till he said, I don't know where Yogananda ends and Kriyananda begins. Master said the same thing. He said, my Guru is more with me now than when he was alive in the body. And the Guru comes in response to our call and our putting our minds on him. Now again, if we can't do it mentally because our minds are tired or because we're whatever, all the different things, the little Maya that pulls on us, then we just play a video of Swamiji, play a chant, call up a friend, do something to just kind of, wake ourselves back up. It's sort of, sometimes we joke, or at Ananda, or maybe it's just the two of us, I don't know, that when we're sort of tired, that we sort of call on God or the other person to bring those paddles, that they resurrect people from the dead with, those electrical paddles. You rub them together and they go clear, and then and so we sort of need that for ourselves, like it's Wednesday evening and just kind of, and then just fine, try to reach the YouTube and try to reach the talk by Swami. Clear! Wake up. Just try to wake ourselves back up again. And again, they're there to help. The desire to want to be open is really, in a certain way, all we need. And so reach for things to help you. It isn't that we have to have unshakable mental will that never deviates. That if we ever have that we have never really had a struggle that way, it very likely means that we haven't been adventurous enough. That we've never hit against our limits and expanded them. We've just had a nice, safe, comfortable time. Now, I don't know anybody here like that, so you needn't worry. But still, we should keep that in mind when we're being tested, when we're being cooked, by the heat outside and so on. Just saying it's Master purifying us and helping us to expand our limits and so on. Remember too that this time of heat generally brings agitation, not only in ourselves and in everyone. And so it's kind of like give people the benefit of the doubt. Someone comes and very cruelly gives a cutting mark that betrays the very essence of our love. And we can just say, it's hot. Suda, chuda, depending on your accent, it's hot. No problem, just let it go. Because it's just hot, it is hot. And then even when it's not hot, we can say it's hot. Because, as Haridasji said once, even when I can't apologize, because it really is the other person's fault, sometimes I just apologize for Maya. I'm sorry that there's Maya, and that's why, we had this whole problem, or your feelings got hurt, or I did this, and whatever. It's Maya, so sorry for that. It's just like we expect that this world will bring us these tests, but keep in mind the two things. The attitude of seeking God ourselves, of wanting Him, knowing that He wants us, and that also of serving others, sharing this joy together. Because even though we're seeking solitarily, with our Guru Bhais, with fellow truth seekers, we get strengthened. And you all know that, you've all experienced that. But remember too, that the purpose of this work is only for souls to find God. That's the primary purpose. We also help each other. But we're helping each other to find God. We are, in a sense, though I've been speaking of spiritual family, and it's nice to feel that sense of connection still. It's to support us in each one's own freedom. And that we support others in their freedom. If we get too personal, if we get too gooey, if we basically say, now I'm going to treat my spiritual family like earthly family with all of that, listen, come on, you know you're not that spiritual. All the ways that people try to pull each other down, well, then we're missing the point. So we have to remember it's a family in God. But also, it's not just a family that's closed, where we all just say, isn't it so nice we found each other, we found our Guru, we're back again, and we can just happily march on to God. We have to help others. Again, you all know this, you have this attitude, but even in your office, even in your family, you don't have to, put autobiography at the breakfast table every morning and just open up to a particular page underlined and just say, in case you have a moment, you're going to need this message. Okay? It's about being nice to me. That's what it's we don't have to do that. But just with the silence of our devotion to God, that will radiate. Master said once, whosoever will see your eyes will change. If you love God, if you do your Kriya, that will show in your eyes, and that is more of a sermon, that is more of a teaching than any perfectly, carved speech or any compelling article. Just the joy that comes from your eyes, because that can't also be faked. And we see that. It's such a joy to see that in you all, especially after having been away. It's nice to sort of to be back together and see that same spirit, and that spirit growing. So remember to balance these two things within ourselves, and remember also to share your joy. And do give someone the autobiography of a yogi if you think they might be interested. One person gave it to somebody else, and that person wasn't interested, but they held on to it. And then later, they gave it to, this woman gave it to her son, and her son became very interested, and then later she became interested. So in other words, you never know where the book is going to go, how it's going to take its journey, but it will be into the right hands. And remember also that our job too is to serve others in whatever way we can. And so if they're not ready for spiritual teachings, fine. We can pray for them. We can pray for Master and Swamiji to bless them. But be a force for good and for joy and kindness in this world. And then not only will it help others, but above all it will help you to speed along the highway to freedom. God bless you.